I will call the February 28, 2023 City Council meeting of City of North Liberty to order. Have a roll call, please, ma'am.
Bermel,
Here.
Harrington. Here. Sittig.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wason.
Here. Moving on to item number 3, approval agenda. We would like to change 18B, the first, striking second and final from that section. Correct? Just as,
We'll have to make
Formality.
nope.
Okay.
Well, we'll do it with the agenda. So a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Anything that anybody has any concerns about?
Mayor, I'd just like Ryan to, it's been a really long time since the police department finished, so for the public's sake, why the large payments so late?
Sure. We were working with a firm out of Kansas, the Kansas City area, with the design and construction administration on this. They had some staff turnover. In addition to that, it took a little while to get some of the final awnings in, although they've been in for a while now. So between that and making sure the police facility design group had their paperwork in order, it took us a little while to get to this point. But we're here now. The chief is satisfied that the punch list is completed, and we're asking for approval and final acceptance.
Thank you.
Any questions? We have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Moving on to the next item. Number 5, public comment. Time for comment in any items not already having public hearings or other things attached to them. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone? Nope, I guess they're not going to. All right, I'll close the public comment. Moving on to number 6, city engineer report.
Okay, thank you. A couple updates on projects. City Hall project, the steel has arrived and they're going to continue with the erection, so you can see it coming out of the ground now. We met with them last week, the general contractor. They're planning on working on the site beginning in March. They're hoping the beginning of March, and it'll start with the site underground stormwater detention system. So that'll be kind of fun for us to watch installed. Two other projects to update you on. The Ranchaw Way paved shoulder projects. We completed the final plans and have those submitted today, and then we have our final staff review meeting on Monday. And that's scheduled for award of contract or consideration of award of contract at the first meeting in April. And then we have a substantial completion date for the contractors by the end of June, June 30th. And then lastly, the Penn Meadows Park North parking project. That one's got a pretty tight schedule. So the base map and the topographic survey is almost completed, and we had our city staff design kickoff meeting yesterday. And we're going to have basically 2 submittals, a 50% submittal and a 100% submittal, and they're both about a month apart. So like I said, it's a pretty tight schedule in order to allow the contractors to start work. Right now we're targeting in July, right after the 4th of July. So I'll keep you updated on that. And that's all I have tonight, unless you have questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Moving on to the city administrator report.
Okay, thanks. I would just note that Kevin doesn't speak for all of us when he said he thinks it's going to be kind of fun to watch a detention basin go in. Maybe for him, but we'll just...
Kind of thought it was interesting.
History shows when we dig there,
Yeah.
not really too good.
We'll get the synopsis from him afterwards, I'm sure, so the play-by-play. I wanted to take just a minute tonight to talk a little bit about the FY24 budget and where we're at with that process. You may have seen that the state legislature approved, the governor assigned the rollback bill that basically will roll back residential values even further. After the signing of that bill, the state, I think, had 2 days to get data or information to the county. The county then had, I believe, 10 days or thereabouts to get us, cities, other local governments, the updated values. Our county office is working hard. They've provided us some early information, but we're really still waiting on the bulk of it. Hope to have that, if not this week, certainly early next. We've also had some conversations with our department heads about where we can look to cut some expenses. We'll be bringing back information to you folks, probably not until March 28th, after we've had a chance to really evaluate some of this. Keep in mind the county's essentially starting over, and so this is really, it's not just as easy as inserting a number and running with it. So we'll be working on that. The new deadline is now April 30th. I think we'll have things wrapped up well in advance of that. But it's something you probably won't see you certainly won't see it at our next meeting. And of course, some of you are going to be gone. So it will be late in March before we bring that back to folks. And then the only other thing I would mention regarding legislation, and as you know, I try to stay out of the politics, but if you have not been paying attention at what's going on at the state level, I'd certainly suggest you look into it a bit. I know Brent's probably concerned with some of the fire legislation that's being passed.
Very much so.
Our fire chief sent an email today to legislators regarding the fire marshal office bill. There are several other bills out there pertaining to fire, pertaining to property tax, pertaining to local control, all of which will have detrimental impacts on local governments and cities across the state. So we continue to monitor it, and we will provide data to the League of Cities and to our own legislators on how a particular bill might impact North Liberty specifically. As you know, though, our legislators are in the minority, and so while they can make comments, they generally go ignored, I believe, in a lot of cases. So my point is we'll continue to update you, but if you know anyone at the state level, you might reach out and start making some pleas with those folks.
And this would be the week to do it because it's funnel. So the things that make funnel matter this week.
They do. I will note, though, property tax bills are they're not impacted by the funnel. They can go through the whole system or the whole process. So that's what I have. Kind of ended on a negative note there, so my apologies.
Quick question about that. Do we have any organization for people to go to the Capitol to show our dismay or lack of support? We do. The Iowa League of Cities does have a lobbyist on staff, and it's been somewhat ineffective, not because of their efforts, but just there's really, this is, in my opinion, a lack of regard for local control and local governments right now at the state house.
Any other questions for Ryan?
So Ryan, I would assume staff's going to be presenting multiple options. So not just going to department heads and asking for cuts, but also, having conversations at this table about what we're willing to do and not do when it comes to surplus allocations, things like that, as far as options?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to take a three-pronged approach, show you options on what it would look like on using reserves, what it would look like to increase the tax rate, and what it would look like from a cuts standpoint. So, yes, there'll be a menu of options.
Remind us how much we expect.
Well, we're anticipating around that $400,000 mark.
All right, moving on to the next item, which is the mayor report. It's a proclamation of International Women's Day and the Women's History Month. And Rakisha is going to read that.
All right. So it's my pleasure to read the proclamation for International Women's Day and Women's History Month. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to all the many women who have contributed to all the wonderful things in locally, across the state, nationally and internationally, young and old. And so we just want to take time to acknowledge them and know that all heroes don't wear capes, and we sit next to women every day who have contributed and made a difference in our lives. So without further ado, whereas March 8th is celebrated as International Women's Day around the world, and whereas the theme of Johnson County United Nations Association's celebration of International Women's Day 2023 is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 15, Life on Land. And whereas around the world, 1.6 billion people depend on forests for their livelihoods, yet forests are being felled at an astonishing rate. And whereas women, particularly those who are poor and living in rural areas, often depend on forests for fuel, fodder, and food. And whereas women globally and locally also lead many smallholder food production operations, and whereas the JCUNA's concern in promoting life on land is both global and local, and whereas the Johnson County chapter of the United Nations Association of the USA and other community partners are celebrating International Women's Day by honoring local organizations led by women that promote community food production, Grow Johnson County, Field to Family, and the Great Plains Action Society at its annual Night of 1,000 Dinners. And whereas these organizations and the World Food Program will be honored on Wednesday, March 8th at Mercer Park Aquatic Center and Scanlon Gym in Iowa City with an international buffet. Now, therefore, Mayor Pro Tem Brian Wason and the North Liberty do hereby proclaim March 8th as International Women's Day in the month of March 2023 to be recognized as Women's History Month in North Liberty, and urge residents to recognize and support the contributions of women in the changing world.
Did you have any comments you wanted to make? Or?
I do.
Please.
Should I?
Yep, please come up and your name and.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Barbara Eckstein. I'm president of the Johnson County United Nations Association. Thank you for reading that. It's a mouthful. The young intern who wrote the proclamation chose to include important information about global deforestation and women's role in reforestation. And we support her attention to this topic as part of Sustainable Development Goal number 15, Life on Land. But we do want to emphasize as well the important work of smallholder sustainable food production here in Johnson County and around the world, work often done and led by women. It's this work in particular that we'll be honoring at the annual event, Night of 1,000 Dinners. Johnson County United Nations Association is committed to the promotion here in our county of not just this one Sustainable Development Goal, but of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we would welcome working with North Liberty City Government on use of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as they're called, as a means to promote and measure your work in sustainability, social justice, no hunger, and all the objectives of the SDGs. In the meantime, we would like to invite the City Council and the city staff to join us for Night of 1,000 Dinners on March 8th, 6 p.m. at Mercer Aquatic Center in Iowa City. We'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got it.
One of the best photographers, one of the kiddos. It's a perfect idea. He probably actually moved into the frame.
We'll crop you out, Kevin.
I can do that with my Google. So,
I believe that was all that Chris had for the mayor report. Moving on to council reports. Anyone have anything to report?
We were just talking about the sip and stroll being postponed, and I believe that's Thursday night, Tracy, yes?
Yes.
Thursday night, thank
The
you.
second?
Yes, so I showed up all dressed up and nobody to walk with me. I didn't get the memo, so darn. But that should be a fun event, so hope to see you out there.
Anyone else? So I got to go to the Heartlanders game at North Liberty night at the arena, and we did the ceremonial first puck drop, which was fun. They were very worried about you falling down on the ice. You get to keep the puck. And we didn't fall down on the ice and hurt ourselves. And a lot of people were there from North Liberty. I sat next to one of the neighborhood ambassadors. We were down in the corner, and we got invited down to the corner by the hitman to pound on the glass with everybody. So we had a good time, and then I know that some of the staff were there and they threw out T-shirts, and people were really liking that. So that's all I have. Moving on to item 10, comprehensive plan. You're on, sir.
Thank you, Council. Charlie Cowell with RDG Planning and Design out of Des Moines. Here tonight just to spend a few minutes to give you an update on the comprehensive plan, or really summarize it because it's here before you today to consider for approval. I've got some notes here because otherwise I'll talk too long, and because it's an exciting plan and a lot of cool stuff in there to talk about. So I will try to be brief and also answer questions as well. Because I know I did present this one other time to you when we weren't quite to the finish line. So today, just want to take a little bit of time talking about our process, where we got to what you see in front of you today, organization of the plan, focus a little bit on the future land use plan, since that is a primary component of the comprehensive plan, and then kind of what's the steps going forward. No real need to explain this. You all know what a comprehensive plan is. It's kind of the primary guiding vision of the community for the long term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. The Planning and Zoning Commission uses it heavily in their recommendations to you that you see every time you meet. The main difference and reason for doing this plan, as you all know, is really to build in updates as fast as you're growing to the current 2013 plan, and also build in flexibility for what is an uncertain future with the speed of growth in North Liberty. We were guided throughout this process by a committee, which you all know, and this committee was really crucial to help us understand not just what's going on today, but what could be happening in the future as far as growth and markets and needs and desires are concerned. So the process we really went through was where we're at today, where do we want to go, and how we're going to get there. And we relied heavily on our engagement with the community. We are familiar with North Liberty, and we worked heavily with city staff on this, but ultimately it's the residents and employees that know the city best. So we tried to reach as many demographics around the community as we could throughout all of last year with a website, some on-site visits, open house events to invite people to, as well as virtual events. So we were able to touch a lot of different sectors of the community, from the high school to the neighborhood ambassadors to more one-on-one listening, small group sessions with various groups and organizations throughout town. And really, I showed this slide here. The survey had a lot of questions, but really the survey really reiterated a lot of what we heard throughout the process. It really just summed it up quite nicely on this slide with kind of the greatest assets and biggest priorities for folks throughout the community that we heard about. And so we took a lot of that up, well, all of that information, along with some detailed analysis with staff and understanding future projects and needs to organize the plan into the framework, the overarching vision and goals, then planning elements for different pieces of the plan, and then implementation going forward. We did take a guide from the Iowa Smart Planning Principles, which hasn't been redacted from Iowa Code yet, so we're still working with that as kind of a guiding element throughout all the elements of the plan. While we don't necessarily have chapters for each one of these elements, they're all kind of folded in throughout the entire plan. And so much like your strategic planning efforts, there's an overarching vision statement for each section, guiding goals and principles, and then more specific policies and actions to get started. I mentioned the future land use map, and that is quite an important part of the process, mainly because of the speed of growth that you've seen in recent years and the past decade. And so this was probably the bulk of time spent was understanding how far do we really need to plan out from your existing city limits and within, because there is quite a bit of land within your city limits to think about as well. For this plan, as you read in there, we're using a 3.5% annual population growth rate, which is consistent with other plans that you have on the books at the city, particularly for utilities and wastewater, water management, and so on and so forth, which gets you around kind of the 45,000 people by 2040, which for our purposes, for the land use planning, translates to a lot of land, basically. Even if we're thinking about more dense housing arrangements and a mixed use environments in a lot more areas, it still translates to several thousand of acres of land development to reach that population. There is quite a bit of land, like I mentioned, within city limits today that is not developed, so there is a lot to fill in yet, but there will be annexations occurring as well as people voluntarily choose to develop their land over time. I mentioned at the beginning is building in flexibility into the current plan. We worked a lot with Ryan and our committee to understand that we can't predict every situation that might happen in the future, but setting up these base development principles will help the planning staff, the planning commission, you make decisions when there's something that's maybe not explicitly called out in the plan, but you can make a decision following kind of overarching principles, which are reflected in each of the chapters as well. One thing that was important too was transportation. So we really started the future land use map looking at the transportation connections and needs for connecting roads, understanding that some of those critical connections will drive growth in certain areas as they occur. And so there is a full transportation master plan in there. I'll mention it really is, and it mentions in the plan, it focuses on point A to point B connections, not so much the exact routes. While we do show routes in there, those will require kind of detailed engineering studies to understand exactly where the routes are go. But the main point is connecting point A to point B as shown in that plan. So, and that eventually translated into what you see as the future land use map in the plan. This is purposely different than your current land use plan. It's more detailed in many aspects because it has a little bit of more differentiation between the districts, but it's also more flexible in a lot of other ways. So you see here there's 6 main districts divided between kind of levels of intensity, which is translated into kind of the scale of development and types of development happening in those areas. So it is generalized, just like your current map, the basis for land use decisions, just like your current map, and it's still market driven, just like your current map. And this kind of illustrates what that means from dividing districts into kind of an intensity level, where at the low end is going to be more residential, lower density type stuff, and the higher intensity is going to be more of a mix of uses and commercial and residential, maybe in more compact arrangements. We got, I won't go through this whole chart, but the plan details out the types of uses that might be in each of those districts. Again, with the flexibility of going in between the districts, there's some fuzziness between the district boundaries where then the zoning code is the actual kind of law that implements those districts. Just going to go quadrant by quadrant real quick here, just to focus in on some areas for those that might be listening or watching online or elsewhere later. The north area you can see zoomed in here is along, when we look at Penn Street and areas to the north, this area is going up to Swan Lake Road is probably pretty far out in the future. But the reason I zoom in on this area is looking at Penn Street and how that develops in this plan through kind of a flex space mixed use approach for business enterprise and those larger scale uses that may utilize or need to use interstate connections and those sorts of things that we envision happening in this corridor and further to the west. The south area is more of infill of existing vacant land that's in the city limits today through neighborhood growth and subdivisions and plats you're already seeing come across your desk in the past year. Even when we were doing this plan, we had to change this a couple times because things were coming forward that we had to amend to meet those. But probably the big idea in this section is where the UI campus will be, and the big tract of land north of there that is vacant right now has a high market demand for. Here shown mixed-use type arrangement, higher intensity, that will supplement the uses on that medical campus. Further to the east is again, some more land that's yet to be developed, but we know there's going to be a new school out there and obviously the high school. And so envisioning how those connections to those spaces get made through a multimodal network in different types of neighborhoods. So again, not going into too much detail on each of these, but kind of giving a big picture level of the future land use map. While that's the kind of driving land use decision-making framework in the plan, there's separate chapters that go into detail on different elements of the city. A big one is mobility. Not going to read through each of these guiding principles, but the overall theme in this chapter is multi-mobility, making sure that there's multiple ways for people to commute or to travel, I should say, within the community, whether that's by vehicle, walking, bicycling, other modes, and being able to do it in a safe and comfortable manner is probably the big picture summary of this chapter, and there's some goals and guiding principles to get started. Shown on the screen there is a Liberty Loop concept that was brought up in the visioning and branding exercise a few years ago. Spaces and places for tomorrow was really, we heard a lot in the process about gathering spaces, about the great places that people go to in the community today and the desire for more. So it's really creating those, focuses on creating those downtown-like areas throughout the community, because North Liberty does not have a traditional downtown setting. So what are those spaces, and not just one space, but multiple areas that could be throughout the community, whether that's a park, the Cherry Street corridor, recreation facilities, or other things. The environment chapter is really all about not just thinking about and conserving environmental features, but actually being proactive in mitigation and protection of the environment, whether that's through site design, actual other projects that would protect the environment, investments in infrastructure or other things, as well as land use policy. Inclusive Tomorrow is really building on a lot of your successes today. That chapter focuses a lot on the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program, what they're doing as well as other organizations within the community, and thinking about how we can continue to kind of proactively move inclusive neighborhoods and spaces forward into the future. Doing Business Tomorrow is, as you can probably guess, is all about economic development, building North Liberty's economic base in strategic areas, thinking about where that growth is likely to occur and managing it appropriately, as well as thinking about other areas within town that are redeveloping or developing as we speak. And you can see here and in the plan the Cherry Street corridor as one of those areas that is kind of emerging as a district within North Liberty. And then lastly, but definitely not least, is supporting tomorrow. So through all of these projects and all of these things that you'll be reviewing over time and budgeting for, is at the very minimum is maintaining quality of life and level of service for residents, hopefully improving that over time. But this chapter talks about those main priorities and how to do that and make sure that we're planning for appropriate other services and infrastructure into the future. And so that was a pretty quick summary, but today, as staff, as you saw in your staff report, is about considering adoption of the Connected to Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan, which would replace the 2013 Comprehensive Plan. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take comments on anything you saw.
You want to hang on with on 1 second? Moving to item B, Planning Commission.
Yes, so the Planning Commission did consider this on February 7th, and they unanimously recommended approval of it.
And I understand that all written comments have been favorable.
And we did receive, just point out a written recommendation for approval from former Mayor Donahue.
And then what I'd like to do is move along to a motion for resolution number 2023-19, a resolution adopting the 2022 North Liberty Comprehensive Plan Connected to Tomorrow.
Make that motion.
And I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Now, anybody have any questions for the gentleman?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate your work on this and especially appreciate all the staff's work and all the volunteers, including Councilperson Harrington, who sat on the committee working on this. The opportunities for input were great, and I hope a lot of people took advantage of them.
I would like to second that and having the opportunity to work with you all, because for us going in there, it was a lot of like pointing and, putting things in places that we felt would, make most sense. But also having the guidance from you all too to help us understand that. So definitely appreciate the work, and Ryan, your work as well with this to get it done.
I just want to say that I've never seen anything like this before. It's extremely well written and hits on so many points that I did not even think to consider, and I just appreciate the amount of guidance that we have for the future in making North Liberty successful.
Yeah, very robust work that took a lot of time, a lot of fun. I learned more about my community than I had known before reading through it, and the depth that you guys went into from transportation needs to the housing, stock and land use maps. I mean, it really is informative, and in the few days that we had to digest it, there's way more in here than we could possibly digest in that short amount of time. And it'll be fun to read through this now as the years go along and have discussions about the planning that will come from it to be able to guide this body and future bodies in what it's needed. I guess the one question that I would ask that many at home that are watching may have is the ability you gave our citizens to, point and click and go in and put as many comments as they wanted in all areas of the community was so much fun. Like, it was addicting to go in there, multiple times a week and see what's new and what new ideas were neighbors putting in and where did they want parks and what did they think of the street. It just was a lot of fun to go in and do that. So with all of that input and all of that data that you collected from everyone, how did that help shape this plan?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because this was going to be one of my closing comments. One, that website is going to stay live for a little while, quite a while actually, so people can still go on and see what those comments are. But I like to say, especially in comprehensive planning, because I consider us coming in and helping your city staff, we're more the facilitator of ideas. So I like to think that with our team at RDG and everything you saw in that plan was filtered from someone we heard or some theme that came out of that engagement and filtered into that document. Of course, there's legal things that we, help make sure are in there and that, but I would say for the most part, most of what is in that document was facilitated from some sort of community input or staff input, so.
And just having that ability to not have to come here or even to an open house, but it was available to everyone. Those that don't have the means to come out, those that may be homebound for various reasons, they were able to go in and click and be active in the program. So, from our council to our citizens that engaged, thank you for all of that input. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I will mention, it's hard to think about, but we kicked this off in January of 2022, and we were still at the tail end of that COVID phase. So we did the first couple meetings virtually, public meetings virtually, and it worked out really well. We had good attendance. Yeah.
Anyone else?
And just to quickly echo everybody, I mean, RDG was outstanding through this process. We did interviews. Charlie was there, and sometimes as a city staff, you're concerned that you're going to get a little bit of a bait and switch, that you get a presentation from maybe the owner of the company, and then that person disappears. But Charlie was in the initial meeting, and they said, Charlie's your guy, and obviously we had the full services of RDG, but Charlie was with us the whole time and never, said, here's the template for what your comprehensive plan is going to be. It's like, no, we don't have that yet. We're still working on that based on input. So I couldn't be more pleased with the process of how it was and how RDG led us through this process.
Thank you. It's a quite impressive document. I encourage people to take a peek on it. It's on the website.
Could I just add one final comment here? When we hired Russ in 2019, I think it was, I talked to him then about needing to update this plan, and as excited as Kevin was earlier about talking about the detention pond, Russ was equally excited about putting together a comprehensive plan. And the work that he put forth, and he invited department heads and other staff, sometimes drug other staff along through the process. So kudos to you, Russ. Thanks for your work on this, and to RDG as well.
Yep. So if anybody gets a chance, I'd really encourage them to look at it. It's a guide for the future, and we have to change things as we move along and stuff, and we've done that with our previous plans. But I think, you just looking at that, and I've been here a while in North Liberty, you can kind of see how things are going, and it really just kind of mirrors, what I would expect things to go into the future and stuff. So thank you very much, sir. All right, any other discussion? Then I think we should have a vote.
Sittig.
Aye.
Bermal.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Plan passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 11, Housing Rehabilitation Grant, which is a status update on our project. And we're having a public hearing regarding status of funded activities for the city's owner-occupied housing rehabilitation grant. And I will open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. I'm Paula Mitchell with ECCOG. And as noted, this is a public hearing to give a report on the status of funded activities for the city's housing rehabilitation program that's funded with Community Development Block Grant. And I'll just start by saying there are a number of points that we have to cover in specificity. So it will seem very much like I'm reading, because in general I am. So I apologize in advance. It doesn't make me the most exciting public speaker, but we do want to make sure we cover all of the points. So, as required for this hearing, it's noted that a CDBG housing contract in the amount of $207,495 was awarded to the City of North Liberty from the Iowa Economic Development Authority, with a release of funds that was issued on February 7th of 2022. For a summary of the expenditures to date through January 31st of 2023, a total of $119,722.70 has been invoiced to the city. $95,500 of that is for construction for the homes, and $24,222.70 is for grant administration and technical services. Construction items included but are not limited to the replacement of roofs, gutters, siding, windows, doors, and steps, generally exterior items, and also lead hazard reduction items. For a general description of the remaining work to be completed, 4 properties have been rehabilitated to date, and 1 property is remaining but has a contractor identified and a pre-construction conference is being scheduled. The completion date is anticipated to be on or about June 30th of 2023. And the city's contract actually goes, I believe, through October, so there's time there if there's an overrun. For a general description of changes made to the project budget, performance targets, activity schedules, project scope, location, objectives, or beneficiaries, there have been no changes or amendments made to date, and we don't anticipate any at this time. We believe things to be on track to wrap up generally on time. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other public wish to make comment? We will close the public comment, or the public hearing. We have to do anything else. So, do you guys have any questions for? Thank you. All right, moving to item 12, the Preserve Part 2B. A resolution number 2023-20, a resolution approving the water service easement agreement for the Preserve Part 2B, North Liberty, Iowa. We have a motion for this?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Do you want to?
Sure. Normally, we have easements on our plats, and they are included with them as an easement agreement or by operation of law, because the easement includes certain magic words like access or utility or whatever. Those are automatically dedicated to the public by way of by operation of law when the plat gets recorded. We missed one, and so this one is just a supplemental one that needs to get tacked on so that we have appropriate access for 2 water lines. And it's on the plat that's already been approved. This is just the agreement that goes with that, specifying our rights, and recommend approval.
Any questions? Have a vote, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving to number 13, assessment resolution, resolution number 2023-21, resolution assessing delinquent amounts owed to the city of North Liberty, Iowa to individual property taxes. A motion for this?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? This is snow, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Bermal.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving to item 14, service truck disposal, resolution 2023-22, resolution approving the vehicle purchase agreement between the city of North Liberty and Bowker Pinnacle Mechanical LLC. A motion for this?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? So this is, we're just going to sell a truck, and then we'll be able to use that funds for replacing it.
Yes.
All right.
It'll offset the replacement cost.
Thank you very much. Can we have a roll call, please?
Smith,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving to item 15, animal ordinance amendment. First is a public hearing regarding the proposed amendments to the animal ordinance. I will open the public hearing. Any public want to, any comments online or written?
None were received.
We will close the public hearing. Moving on to first consideration of ordinance 2023-04, ordinance amending chapters 55, 56, and 57 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of North Liberty, Iowa, concerning procedures for impoundment and redemption of impounded animals, compliance requirements for dangerous dogs, and licensure of service animals. Have a motion for this?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions?
It might just be helpful to have an explanation of this.
You want more? I'm happy to do it. Well, let me get, this is a supplement really to the overhaul that happened to our animal code that was led by Chief Veniga in 2019 to have a more flexible approach to animal control and the options associated with that, which allowed us to, instead of impound and euthanize animals, we can declare a dog to be dangerous or potentially dangerous and require owners to have specific duties that they have to perform in order to keep those animals, to demonstrate that they can safely keep those animals. So requirements on different specific kinds of leashing, getting insurance coverage for your home, a wide array of things, and this has generally been pretty great. In that process, it's been implemented well, but we found a couple bumps along the way. One is that there is some contradictory language in our current code with respect to how long an animal is impounded, when, and it's based on licensure, but the kind of animal, and it was, we have to keep animals for 3 days unless they're licensed, but in no case less than 5 days or 7 days, which made no sense. And so this is simplifying the process, so we will specify what kind of notice we need to give these people, and it should work well. We put this together and worked with our streets department, our police department, and with Cedar Valley Humane Society to make sure that these are provisions that are in line with the contract we have with them already, that they're enforceable, and that they can help us when they get an animal that's impounded, that they can help us verify that they have a license on that end, that they can get a chip in the animal, and if it doesn't have one, and those can all be wrapped up and handled through cost resolution or fees that are set by this body by resolution. There's an extensive redlining in it, but I'll wrap it up by saying I'm pretty proud of this one. I think this is a good change, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have. It's somewhat voluminous, so I might have to look for the answer, but I will do my best. If you have any questions.
Any questions?
I'm just assuming each of these changes are very specific to occurrences that have taken place.
Sure, and also to specific requests. There's a particular type of collar that's called a martingale collar that is better than a choke collar for controlling animals, and that's what we've included in the definition of as an example of proper leashing. Councilor Wason asked about accommodations for licensing for ADA for service animals under the ADA. That's been included here as well. So we've incorporated feedback as things have happened over the last several years, and we got into a big enough pile of proposed changes that we thought we needed to put in front of you.
Anyone else? Can we have a roll call, please?
Bermal,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
The first consideration passes. Thank you. Moving to item 16, Physicians Building Group Zoning Map Amendment, third consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-1, and ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa, from ORP, Office and Research Park District, to C3, Higher Intensity Commercial District. Give a motion for this.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Can we have a roll call, please?
Bermal,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Third consideration passes. Moving on to number 17. Third consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-2, an ordinance amending Chapter 180 subdivision ordinance, Chapter 165 zoning code administration, and Chapter 173 zoning code sign regulations of the municipal code of the city of North Liberty, Iowa. Have a motion for this?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Bermal.
Aye.
Third consideration passes. Moving to item 18, zoning ordinance moratorium. Item A is discussion and possible action on waiving the requirement for consideration at 3 meetings prior to final action. Can we just discuss that? or do we need to?
So in order to accelerate the adoption of an ordinance, this body would need to pass by a 3/4 vote, or 4 of you, a motion agreeing to do so, if that's what you want to do. And normally you have to have 2 meetings before final action. This is paraphrasing that, I guess. But my understanding is that the proposed moratorium is, which Russ will speak a little bit more about, but the idea is that it's to line up with the adoption of the comprehensive plan. The moratorium considers the 2014 future land use map and compatibility with the proposed land use map. This would lend it to just being compatible with the now adopted land use map, so that there's no confusion. And accelerating the readings would eliminate any overlap for anything that happens in this coming period. So,
Right. Do we have
So
to have a motion then to do that?
We
Okay.
would need a motion to waive the requirement for 3 meetings prior to final action.
I'll make that motion.
And seconded?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Normally, I'm not on board with this kind of thing, but to line up, to avoid issues, I think it makes sense.
I think that it gets things going because construction season is going to be starting. We need to kind of don't put an artificial roadblock in the way of people and stuff. So it's moved and seconded. Do you have to roll call?
Voice vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we need to,
I don't think you need to do a voice, I mean, it doesn't hurt to
I'm
do a
okay.
roll call.
I guess,
Oh,
we have to show that there's 3/4, right?
Yeah, if the clerk, yes, it'd
Okay.
probably be cleaner sorry.
No, it's fine.
I was ready for that.
Yeah.
Bermal,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. So we'll move on to B, which is a consideration of ordinance number 2023-3, ordinance amending chapter 165 of the city code, zoning code administration by narrowing certain compliance requirements when the existing site plan application and review moratorium.
Move
Motion
approval.
for that?
I'll make the motion to approve final consideration.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Have a roll call, please.
Bermal,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion passes and the final reading passes. So moving on to old business.
Mayor, I guess it is old business with the SAFER grant and the fire department and their hiring. Congratulations to those who currently are being trained in their new positions. Congratulations to Chief Plotz for the planning, and now hopefully he can stay off the fire truck.
That's actually quite a big deal for the city.
It is.
You know, we have, more full-time firefighters, and I think that's quite a thing for us and will improve public safety. Moving on, anyone else? Moving on to item 20, new business. As we talked about, Stip and Stroll is this Thursday, and then the pizza with
Thursday.
politicians. Yep. Pizza with the politicians is this Thursday too. Anyone else? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned.
I assume that was a wish rather than a second.